John Bevil, Product Director for Capital Markets for Xceptor. If you don't know Xceptor, if you're not familiar with Xceptor, we build business process and solve data challenges for the capital markets area.
Thank you. Elena Parigi Adragna. I work in the market solutions team, operation workflows. Prior to joining Symphony, I was for 18 years in banking operations, split between Morgan Stanley and Deutsche Bank, so ex-banker.
Oh dear.
Just like to say I had 30 years as well in operations.
Oh dear.
There's a competition going on now, isn't there? Okay, I'm Daniel Carpenter. I'm the CEO of Meritsoft. Meritsoft is 100% owned by Cognizant. Cognizant is the gorilla in the most rooms. We have about 350,000 staff globally in the tech space, but Meritsoft is a capital market specialist post-trade platform.
Thank you very much indeed. So, let's get straight into it. We talk a lot about regulation and compliance and how this eats into the time and resources of our clients. Do you feel that interoperability between platforms can alleviate this burden? And can you give us examples of either or any of these that have taken place within your environment? Dan, I'm going to ask you first, if you don't mind.
No, not a problem at all. So the simple answer is interoperability is critical. Why is it critical? If I look at what we've been delivering in terms of tax solutions or CSDR in those areas of regulation, MiFID II, then STP, the panel before was talking about, it's great when it goes through nicely. What happens when it doesn't? And it's as simple as that. It's a case of how do you resolve that exception? How do you get the client to confirm, disagree, agree, whatever it is, resubmit, and then reprocess? So from our point of view, sitting over and aggregating it and then being able to communicate via email and PDFs is great. We've now got to move into the next world, and that is how do I get that automation? And then how do I record that and have my audit trail? Because GRC is sitting over everyone saying I must have an audit trail of everything and be able to see who's agreed to what. And it's that audit trail. I'll stop there. But there's absolutely integrating with something that can then push it out, record it, and pull it back again, fundamentally.
Yeah, you can't get anything from emails that are sent to people.
Well, you can, but again, another point, one of the clients we've been speaking to, they're talking about their email history and how long they're going to record it for. And we talked about, will it be turned off after 90 days, 120 days? Will it be archived? How do you access it? So it then becomes how do I retrieve and prove when I get an audit, internal or external? So absolutely.
Elena.
Yes, and I'll go back to regulations, how much time it takes us, a significant amount of time, and not only for our clients, but also for us as vendors. Anything we do is always with in mind meeting regulatory asks. Every product we launch, every upgrade we do to a product, we need to make sure it really meets regulatory asks. Speaking about the emails we've done, so when we speak about regulations, we go back to 2008. The most important that comes to mind is reporting, but things have evolved. So now even communication has to be meeting regulatory asks. So a regulator can come and knock on our door with very short notice, and that's to access the communication. And how can you do this? So look at what has happened over the last couple of years with so many fines to the big players because they were executing trades on WhatsApp. Did they want to execute trades on WhatsApp? Not necessarily. But for example, in commodities, if you're trading with a grain farmer in South America, he doesn't have a platform. He doesn't want to invest on a communication platform. He has a telephone and that is good enough. But as a regulator, I need to understand why you've been buying and selling. This is why the fines. So interoperability is very important here, trading, but also you need to connect with the communication platform of your choice. If your counterpart wants to be on WhatsApp, let him be on WhatsApp, but you need to meet your regulator's demands. You need to be able to capture that, to be able to prove why you did that execution.
Yeah. John?
Well, so regulation, I think, it probably touches everybody in this room at some point. It's certainly touched Xceptor and our customers over the last 10 or so years. I think if we just rewind and think about those particular regulations we've got in place, so you've got FRTB, CSDR, you've got rewrites in ESMA and CFTC, We've now got T+1, which is pulling everybody left, right, and centre. It's a challenge, and we have to be able to, as a service provider and a technology provider in this space, we have to be agile enough to work in those spaces, work with our customers to solve those problems. I think data is the currency here. Across all of those, you're seeing the need for quality data and that interoperability between what can be provided from a system like Xceptor to do that reporting and so forth into the regulators.
Yeah, and then linking it all up together between the fintechs to make it easier for everybody to get to that data in a consistent way.
I think I mentioned it earlier on, the normalization of data or the centralization of data is the key, and how do you stitch it all together?
Yeah.
So it's the internal stitching of data, but it's also then pulling the external stitching of data into the system. So you've got that 360.
Yeah.
And
So
the governance and control wrapped around all of that, of course, as well.
So that leads me quite nicely into, or it's a good segue into the next question, which is well about fintechs in this space. Like I said earlier, it's up to us to come up with the reasons or the ways of being able to bring that thing together and make it available to our customers, and not our customers to tell us how to do it.
Agree.
So, you know, do in the fintechs in this space, why do we need to come together? What is it that's really driving that? I know regulation's one of the most important ones, but what about customer service? You know, everybody knows happy customers buy more. So it's increased customer service, is it not?
I think, again, sorry.
Elena?
Go on.
Totally, and we discussed with Sean and Nitesh earlier. So the banks have the expertise, and they don't have the resources often and the time, just because they work on a much bigger scales. So they need to make a choice. They have a lot of priorities. They can deliver the changes, but they don't have the time. So once they delegate to us, we need to make sure that we offer something compliant, that something that is really going to change the workflow and the way they operate. But we don't need to, we need to deliver. We need to do the work for them, and they are paying us. Now, when we do the work for them, we need to bear in mind that the deliverables are the same for every big bank, from every outsourced providers, but they have some bespoke processes they have within any organization. So when we deliver, we need to be nimble enough to offer a solution that works for everyone. They are interoperable, and bank A can speak with client B. But at the same time, we need to be able to offer that tweaking, the nuances that every client needs from us.
Yeah, that interoperability and the ease of doing it has to be on the basis that we meet the customer where they are. I know we said it on the previous panels, but what that actually means is somebody can be in Symphony and stay in Symphony, or somebody can be in email and stay in email and deal with the problem in that platform, and then be able to deal with the other exceptions on the other side seamlessly. Do you agree, John?
Yeah, the user experience is paramount here. I mean, we work with our customers in mind, and we empower our customers to build their own processes as well. So it's a two-way street, and unless you have that sort of camaraderie, that relationship with the industry as well, and building friendships like we are today in understanding the real root problems that we're all trying to solve. I think that's the step forward. That's how I think industry's changed over the last, I would say, 5 years particularly, that we come together more as a community of minds to solve for the user challenges.
What about you, Daniel? I mean, and you've got obviously examples of this in the platform that you work in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'll come and show it in a while, but the reason we got behind that platform is when we started looking at interest streams, and we started looking at CSDR, and then we saw T+1 coming over the hill. It was, how do we provide a single platform, single pane of glass, SPOG, where you can actually see everything without moving out of that system. So within the bank, that's what I want. I think we referred to swivel chair earlier on, and not having to swivel out and being delivered your exception.
Swivel chair risk, as they call it.
But on the client side, it's the same thing, or the counterparty side, it's being able for them not to swivel and say, okay, I can handle those messages whichever route it comes through, so it then goes back in and completes that thing. It was mentioned earlier on that the differentiation is less about the post-trade, or it should be less about the post-trade. It's more about the upstream and striking the deal. The post-trade needs to automate more, but as was pointed out earlier on, the budget is going to run the bank, and then within change the bank, it will go to reg first, and then after reg, you may get some residual if you're lucky to start doing some of these things. So I think it's an opportunity to look at your strategy and work out how you want to do that and use reg as a driver to actually improve post-trade operations and provide those services. It's a perfect umbrella.
Yeah, we had an interesting meeting this morning with, I won't say which bank, but they're saying exactly that.
Yeah.
Let's use regulation to make change.
It's generally where the budgets are landing these days, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's enough regulations to drive that conversation.
Yeah. So, but again, that goes back to legacy systems, and we talked about it in the other panel. I promise the two panels are not linked. We haven't actually traded questions, James and I, but it is I promise it's not. So for legacy systems, and change it is hard. Everybody knows it's really hard. But, you know, should new tech and fintechs be able to change the systems and show people how to change the systems and use interoperability to make that happen? So, Elena, that's a question really for you to start with.
So, and we touched on this earlier. So, bigger organizations like banks and outsource providers, they are the most likely to have legacy systems, and they are working on legacy systems. They are 30, 40 years old. The most used nav systems are 40 years old. But it's very difficult to move away from them. And again, because bigger organization has less time and resources, they have the budget, but they need to decide again what the priority is. Outsource providers is exactly the same, and they are in the conundrum where the buy side, they want to delegate to their outsource providers, and they pay a fee, and they say, give us a better service. We don't want to pay higher fees, so you need to keep the fee. The investors of the outsource providers say, we want to see more revenue. So how do I deliver a better service to my buy-side clients and give more revenue to my investors? So automation is the only answer, and so I do need to invest. The first few years I will be losing money because I need to invest in new technology. But again, I don't have the resources, so help me as a vendor. And again, Sean was saying, we are dealing with clients with multi-custodians, so we need to look at solutions because every client will have a different custodian, will have a different preference, vendor strategy. So as a community of vendors, we need to be able to deliver our products but in an interoperable way where I'm able to speak with you, with your client. You stay in your platform, as we said before, you don't need to leave. We'll be able to communicate. I will be able to push my data from my system into yours because of the open infrastructure of the API. So for you, a seamless experience, but we need to speak. So we need to do this for our clients. They are paying us to do this.
I'm going to I like disagreeing. So I think the main thing I disagree with is it's got to be quick. And I think multi-year investment, we've got to show ROI to the investors that is going to be. And how do you substantiate that is actually looking at the quantity and how you're improving your aged debtors or reducing that timeline and reinvesting the investments, or how you close items out quickly so you need fewer staff because you're automating. I totally agree with you about the isolation. So I think one of the key things that we can do as technology providers is look at the mainframes and isolate you from change. So in the background, you can start turning off certain things piecemeal, whilst the customer experience and the operations experience doesn't change. It becomes a technical back sort of ground task that's going on.
Yeah,
so it's an isolation.
It doesn't need to be a big bang, does it? It doesn't need to be a big bang.
No.
No, exactly. Small, manageable tasks.
Yeah, well, it is, and there's a lot of plumbing in the banks. We know that, and if you look at the different settlement systems around the world, or you look at the different custody systems, there's a lot going on there. But you can't drop your customer service because that's the differentiator for you as a custodian or an investment bank or a broker dealer.
Is any of that, though, John, I'm interested in your answer, but I'm interested in knowing if any of that is built around some people saying, I don't want to do this change because actually it could be my job.
There's certainly that argument, but there's also it's not broken, why fix it argument.
Yeah. Right? So
people will live with a relative level of pain until they get to that point where the sticky plaster snaps. So I agree with everything that's been said on the panel so far. I think, we have to manage the style and the frequency of change. And I don't think it's anything that you can solve overnight, and you have to sort of break it down into small chunks and just solve for the bits that are going to maximise the return on investment straight away.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at penalties, and I like causing it again an issue. The stats that have come out are that CSDR has actually halved the number of penalties. What it's actually done, if you look at the stats, it's halved the value of the penalties, not the quantity of penalties. Because the quantity of penalties of an ops person is still the same, except you've now got partials to manage as well, which makes it even uglier. So how do you resolve that and put it so the ops cost is still there? I think the other thing about voting for your jobs and all the other good stuff about automation, it's life. Get on with it. You've got to get the technology in place because as a business, you've got to keep up with your peers, competitors, and be profitable and provide the client service. And technology allows you to do that. But there's a way of reallocating and moving people around so they focus on revenue generating. And the other thing is looking at the back office and saying, can you contribute to revenue? Can you charge interest for late settlements to generate some revenue stream? I had that conversation this morning with someone.
But the spotlight's on it now, isn't it? Being in a high interest environment, right?
You've got the perfect storm.
The fail rate, I mean, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's 6% something still from CSDR. That's 6%.
It depends where you go in the flow as well. But if you look at affirmations in T+1, they're coming out with stats. We're getting affirmations that says 75, 76, 77%. That still means 24, 25% isn't being affirmed all the time. Doesn't mean they're failing.
Yeah, exactly.
But you've got this, what's happening in the industry is you've now got this reason to charge. But if you're going to charge, you've got to communicate. And you've got to validate and all the other good stuff internally.
Doing that, though, you can't communicate using email, can you? I mean, it's not a way of doing it, is it?
Well, I think
that's why we've got to interoperate between us and collaborate to come up with a solution that helps.
I think our friend Barnaby Nelson at Value Exchange I don't know if he's here today, he's come up with some stats on this, and I think he said that for T+1, 51% of fails will be managed through phone and email. Now I think as an industry, I think that's pretty damning.
But we haven't got fax in there.
We haven't got fax in there.
We moved on.
Yeah. Or telex.
Well,
if you ask my kids, they don't know what a fax is. They have no.
So I think that's a pretty damning statement.
Yeah.
We've known about CSDR, T+1, all of these sort of gaps in operations, as we like to talk them, for a number of years now. And we're still at that point where 51% of breaks through T+1 will be managed through email and phone. There has to be a conversation where we penetrate that as a
and that's where technology, rather than, and again, I appreciate a lot of people build in house and all the other good reasons for doing that, but you can get economies of scale if you go to a vendor. The point of vendor is we're looking at it and we're bringing the brains from around the table and all the houses we meet, as well as bringing in ideas and solutions that we invest in to bring to the table to you then benefit from.
Yeah.
And you've got to choose the right ones. I get it. I 100% get what's external and what's not.
Any further views on that?
No, I wanted to add, didn't want to spoil it, but speaking with continental European clients, they are still very much using faxes. So we haven't got rid of faxes, and they are still there very much.
Yeah, but it's an electronic fax. It's not that old thing that you used to go in the corner and buzz out a piece of paper. That's it.
I'm not getting no denial.
I haven't seen it for ages.
Not until recently. I've worked with Japanese clients that want to have physical fax, so they can chop it with their ink-based chop. Yeah. And then send
Put a stamp on it with a wet
We see that
signature.
in some of our solution sets and OTC confirmations, for example. It's a bilateral exchange of an agreement, and they still want the physical signature or the physical chop.
We are working with Xceptor, and there is a working group aimed at just work to get rid of faxes because they are still so commonly used.
That's the Xceptor one that we've also been asked to join.
But I think going back to your point, you aren't going to get rid of email tomorrow.
Yeah.
To be really clear about
No,
it.
no,
So
it's never going to disappear.
Record all of those items and suck it.
It's about how you interop with the email as well as Symphony, as we saw earlier on from Keishan's bit. So that really leads me into sort of the next question, which is working with the end user in mind, what are the needs and how can connected ecosystems address them? Are swivel chair time, resources, constraints real? Are they real? And what about the end users in the desktop space and headache space?
Wow.
So,
it's
a long one.
A bit shorter.
I'll shorten that. In other words, what are the real headaches that are driving us?
Guess you don't have a product if you don't have a user. So, and you don't have a user if you don't listen to the user and you deliver what he wants. We know that teams are really tight with resources, with time. Every team that 10 years ago used to have 10 team members, and now they have 2. And out of these 2, one at one stage has to go on vacation or will call in sick, so it's left with one person. So what really our clients are asking us is, we can't waste time. We need to be sitting in our platform of choice. I can't afford to switch between one system and the other just because I have a query coming and I need to check the status in another, or I need to call my sales and trading desk or my middle office. So what clients are asking us is, allow us to stay in our platform of choice, allow us to be able to pull and push data from other systems, whether they are internal, proprietary systems or vendors we're using. Allow us to do the same to push that externally. And how can we do this? Just if there is interoperability. I'm going to use one platform, you're going to use another platform. But it's like a mobile, right? I'm using the iPhone and you're using Samsung. We are still able to communicate. So what clients are asking is exactly the same.
John?
I'll take a heritage approach here, as I've been around for a little while longer. We've actually made some steps, right? So when I first started, if we take the payment space, for example, I used to walk bankers' payments and drafts and things around the city. Because we couldn't interoperate. We couldn't make those payments between ourselves. The insurance policy on my back was bigger than the banker's payments that I was carrying in my satchel. So we've moved on significantly through them. If you look at the payment space, particularly how that's now merged together. When I first started working in operations, it would be, you type in a payment instruction and then you go to the other corner, somebody else types in the payment instruction. So that interoperability has been growing for a little while. It's only we see the example of the payment space now where I can just press a button on my mobile phone and bingo, I've made an international transfer to somebody else. So it's growing. We're on a slower journey than other industries, but certainly I think we're on the right path, right? It's not all doom and gloom.
The credit cards have been quite quick at getting your money off you when you get monthly payment. It's literally, I press it and it's gone. It's like ping, ping, I've got it. It's like, great. Do it in our industry, we are
But
way
also
away.
You go ping and it's gone, but you can see that it's gone.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's arrived the other end.
Right? So that's interoperable.
In our industry, there's still too much, even though we do auto payments and everything else. The point is a lot of people will still sit there and go to another swivel and do a payment instruction in another system. Your point is right, once it's in that system, but an ops person has to go between 2 systems, and then you introduce risk. Absolutely. And validation. So suddenly it's a transposition of a figure, the wrong SSI, the wrong whatever it is, and that's where it starts getting a bit ugly about it. And you've got to resolve it, and then you go through the bubble, and how do I go to people and resolve things for us? So there's ways round it, but the more you can do in automation and post-trace, the better.
Okay, so we're getting towards the end. Are there any questions from the audience at all that you want to place for the panel? Not me, but the panel. Any questions? No?
I should have planted one.
Mark, you haven't got to do your runner yet. Okay, so just a final couple of questions, really. Focusing on tackling problem resolution or query resolution as an industry problem, what do you see from your own experience are the drivers, specific drivers for that?
Taxing as in stress on them. I think it's slightly a roundabout answer, but when you look at utilities, so I think there are ecosystems, many ecosystems. Integration of the ecosystems, as you demonstrated, is a key part. There isn't a single. I think utilities is where people are looking at their cost optimization. And it's a case of, I can differentiate on the front, but when I look at cost and AI and other stuff, how can I, and do I need to retain something that is a non-differentiator? So I think cost is always going to be a driver outside of regulation and all the other things. It's where do I need my people, and does it make me different? And can I ask someone to outsource it effectively, whether it's middle office, back office, fees and billings, whatever it may be.
John?
Can you repeat the question again?
Yeah. If we focus on tackling query resolution as an industry problem, what have you seen from your own experience are specific drivers for people changing the systems and the way that they work?
Well, I think it's that centralised cockpit, right, as I think we've just been trying to get to, right? Think of yourself as a pilot. You don't want to be swivelling your chair around and walking around the back and switching buttons here, there, and everywhere. You won't be in business too much long. So I think it's that user experience, right? If you can empower your users to have everything sitting in front of them focused, so they can make value-added decisions. Now, I think that's the important thing, right? You don't want to be doing meniality tasks. You're not going to keep people for very long if that's your case, right? It's going to be value-added tasks. So if you can cut out the noise, and I think this is where data and how we manage data can really, really help with that. So you're just left with the purest exceptions. And those, if they're managed centrally and correctly, like within Taskize, then you have an optimized operational flow.
Totally agree. Cost and risk reduction are certainly the top drivers. And what we see with our clients is, because query management is so cumbersome, everyone has done an analysis, and pretty much out of 100% of queries, 90% are vanilla. So what the firms are really struggling with is why do we need to spend all this time and effort of vanilla queries? Can we enable our clients to find their own answers? So the future state, and this is a journey we've already started, is let's enable our clients to self-service and find their own answers. Let's give them the access to our systems. Clearly, with criteria, with mapping, I can't allow Simon to look into a position that, for Dan. But let's enable them to self-service and answer themselves the 90% of vanilla queries. And the 2 team members I'm left with in my team, let's them focus on non-vanilla queries. So let's give them the tools that will benefit us, will save time, cost, resources, but our clients will do the same, will save time, cost, and resources.
Okay, thank you. Dan, you?
I was just actually thinking about exactly what you were saying. Is the other thing about it is if you're looking at it from them self-servicing through portals or through Taskize or wherever, you're actually reducing your costs. Rather than handling the queries, you're making them empowered to handle the query, which indirectly saves you money, improves client service, speeds up the process, improves liquidity. There's a ripple of the whole process, so it really does make sense to be sort of more accessible, let them resolve it, let alone the GRC side of things and everything else.
Okay, so this is a bit of the last question, conclusion. It's a bit of a leading one, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is there a potential for one platform to provide a common goal or common tool, as a glue between systems? Do you agree? And have we seen examples of this? Let me think.
You're not even leading us. I've got blunt force trauma. Yeah. I mean, you guys are doing the mapping between all the other ecosystems that are out there. So you've taken that right approach in terms of providing the mapping. Not something the bank has to worry about, not something I have to worry about. I have to worry about the integration of all the underlier to then record it, to pass it to you, to say, go out for the exceptions which need resolving externally. So my one thing is, is there ever going to be one ecosystem in any industry to do anything? And I'm sort of nervous on that because there's competition. Naturally, there's always going to be competition coming into it. So it's how do you integrate to these things? But that's why
competition is good.
Competition is healthy. It moves it forward. It really does move it forward. But we're here talking. And we wouldn't have been on the same table, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, whatever it is. But there's a role to play.
Yeah.
There's a role to play.
Now, I think it's important that the fintechs understand that let's stop fighting for the whole real estate or the bit of the real estate. Let's all work for the bits that we know, because the sum of the parts are bigger than the whole.
It goes back to the previous conversation around, is it best of breed or do you try and build everything?
Yeah.
And there's always been that argument, and it goes backwards and forwards every 3 years. I'm different. I want to build it. Not. The rules for tax are the same for you as for them, or the rules of settlement and CSDR and T+ are the same. So why are you trying to build something that we can get economies of scale?
Elena?
So the question again was one platform.
One tool.
I think there are too many processes and functions for one platform. We'll be in a stage where we'll have few platforms. But every firm has a different strategy, and we say competition is good. So no, I don't think we'll have just one platform, but we'll have very few platforms that will be able to communicate with one another, will be seamless. So not a monopoly. We don't want a monopoly. We say competition is good.
Yes.
But very, very few Taskize that will glue the market.
Yeah.
I'm sure Taskize would want the monopoly on this. But my view is very similar. I can't see a state where you have the critical mass, where you have everything in one place. And there's dangers in that as well.
Yeah.
Everything all in one place. It's the proverbial EUC type conversation. But I do agree. I think the industry driven through recent regulations is primed. That is the route to go to. There is definitely the centralisation of how can we get everybody speaking the same language in exception management. And I think that's only going to be helpful when you're trying to close the gap in what we're seeing around the dry to T+1, for example, is how can you see what your risks are, how can you mitigate those costs. And if you have that in one central platform, then it makes total sense.
Yeah. Exception management, I think it's problem resolution of exceptions. That's what we're talking about, really. So, I'm going to ask again, are there any questions from the audience for the panellists?
2, 3.
Oh, there's one over there.
You said something awkward.
Dylan Thomas from Gresham.
Hi.
Oh, no, it's not Dylan Thomas. Diana.
Yeah, hi. It's going to be around data again, I'm sorry. A broken record on this. Do you think the data vendors out there are taking responsibility for the management and accuracy of their data in the way that they should be doing?
Sorry, are there any data vendors in the audience before I answer?
Yes.
I will stand on the side for a bit because I'm a little bit new ex-banking, so I do have an opinion.
I could bounce it back and say, what's your opinion on that one? But
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I think data vendors have an extreme job of collating data from around the world and cleansing that data and scraping it and pulling it together. You could argue that AI is going to make it easier and better and everything else like that, but they don't control everything, and you've got a lot of internal data. We've probably been having LEI conversations for however long, SSI conversations for however long. There still isn't an ultimate source for one thing. It would appear. And I'm not an expert on it. I used to be data stream many years ago.
Yes, I recognise you.
Oh dear. Okay. Wow. So yeah, I don't think that it's a responsibility of the institution to aggregate the right data from the right sources, and some are stronger in certain markets, and that's where it comes down to. But it goes back to, and it's like I'm going to join it back to this thing. You've got to have different sources. For ecosystems, or you will end up with ecosystems, or you will end up with different sources, whether it's Bloomberg data that is really strong on X, or it's real-time trading data. But the aggregation of data vendors, we keep seeing them aggregating, and Thomson Reuters and Primark and DataStream. I'm casting myself back too far now. But yeah, so yeah, we'll see. But that's sort of I'll open it up to others. That's not my view on it.
Yeah. Elena, you.
Yeah, I agree with the colleague who placed the question. So the vendors, the data vendors, we work with a few. We have some colleagues in the audience. They do the best they can. They collate from the sources. There is always the discrepancy. This is why every end user is always using 2 or 3 sources to compare. That is going to happen. There is no way around this. But this is why now also we see with our clients that they leverage the bot to consume and compare data coming from 2 or 3 sources so that they are able to see in real time which one is the correct, the one they need to use to enrich their data. So the data is not perfect, but it's getting there. There is a lot of work being done to scrub and normalize and structure in the delivery. Now, many of the partners' data we are working with, they deliver in a structured format, easy to query at the touch of a button, because the traditional way to deliver the data is a subset of hundreds of millions of data sets every day, delivered into a SharePoint or shared drive. It really doesn't work. As an end user, I cannot go into a spreadsheet into my SharePoint because it's going to freeze. All I need is a very quick answer. Is there a corporate action today impacting my trade? if I go into the SharePoint, it's going to freeze me for the next 10 minutes. But querying, as we said earlier, self-service, in a split of a second, you can compare two free sources.
T+1 is going to really drive that as well, isn't it? It's that instant access to resolve a problem.
John?
Could I ask where this question's actually coming from? I'd be interested just to see the
Diana?
Well, I have a real problem with unverified data. And Bill over there, we talk about SSIs.
SSIs, Mr. Bill.
Yeah, and gosh, I've gone back all the way back to when I was at Merrill, and we were, launching the various research systems. And I think a lot of work can be done. I'm in the data space now. This is my second startup. And how much does it cost to manage the data, whether it's proprietary data, external data, combining the data, but managing corporate action? There is a way to manage it. And now we are part of Symphony, right? And Taskize, working with them as well. So I have a different view on the one platform. I think it's interoperability, as Simon says. Yeah. So I think if we just get the right people together and start encouraging people, competition aside, because we've all got that, right? But rowing in the same direction. IDs should not divide the market. Right?
Shouldn't.
They shouldn't, no. Exactly. But they do. But if you can start, joining...
It's a journey.
If you start joining the ID game up and get ahead of the vendor IDs, who owns whom, who owns what, that's where it's coming from.
Okay. Well, I can only speak from the perspective of Xceptor on this one, and we're more in the unstructured space of data. So turning sort of unstructured facts, emails, etc., into something tangible. I think there's probably a conversation to be had as to how we can probably challenge that as an industry. But certainly, bringing all of that data together and aggregating it to a standard. And I think that ultimately that's where we're trying to get to as an industry, standardisation of some kind. It's been a long journey. I mean, how long have we been talking about ISO 20022 and so forth, right? It's been...
We could be here for a long time, and I'm not going to elongate this any longer.
Okay.
But one more question. I think Dylan Thomas from Gresham had one, and I think we'll wrap up.
So, just inspired by what Elena was saying earlier about, pushing the boring tasks, if you like, back or out to outsourcers and things like that. So, are you finding you're being asked for more information? And how how to provide more information to bigger pools of teams that are dealing with reconciliations at a larger scale, so they have the more understanding, so the front office can just approve. Are you working on anything in the front end to make that information flow to the back offices as well?
So communication between teams within the same firm.
Yes.
Yes, so one of the biggest challenges we see our clients raise is the time they spend querying and validating information with other colleagues within the same firm. So they look at those queries the same way they are looking at external queries. They are wasting too much time just answering or just perusing information. So all we do with our clients is very much is both internal and external, but internal is the same effort. So the work we are doing for internal push and pull information is 50% with what we are doing, the work we are doing externally with clients. So they see they really are struggling to find the correct resolution owner internally as they are struggling externally. So what they want is a self-service bot that connects them to the front office and booking, or to the corporate action where other colleagues are taking care of corporate actions, to the collateral, to the nav, and being able to query and to access the data.
And that's actually the key reason why we've done the integration to Symphony, because you've got the front office people in Symphony and the back office people in Taskize. The two need to be able to be talking to each other without swiveling chairing away from those applications. So it makes life really easy and simple.
Just want the front office to approve, not to spend time scratching their heads about things that are...
Exactly, and that's what Kishan presented earlier on, and we'll be presenting another part of it now. So I'm going to wrap it up now. In conclusion, basically, you've seen interoperability and collaboration, or collaboration and interoperability working together. It's us as fintechs who have to come together to create that. I think somebody in this room said it at InvestOps, not going to say who it was, that it's the fintech's job to do it.